Hey everyone, I'm Anya Esma, and today we are going to talk about my lessons from 2021. It's not going to be particularly witchy, it's mostly relating to shadow work. So if you consider that a witchy thing, that's great, because I'm mostly going to be talking about really lessons that I've learned with regards to my behavior, other people's behavior, my psychology, my psyche, whatever. So it's not going to be a super witchy video, just to warn you, but I think it's still going to be interesting because I will be talking about some old and new beliefs. I've talked in the past about how I do these paradigm shifts where I try to make out some beliefs that I have that are problematic or not helpful to me, and I convert them into new beliefs basically. And I will talk about that. I will read some to you that I wrote down. I'm also going to talk a little bit about codependency. Last time I did this with the 2020 lessons video, which I will link below in case you're interested, I also spoke about codependency, and this is now kind of an update about how it's going, like healing from that and working with it. And yes, and also admitting maybe some mistakes I've made during this year, some things I could have done better. So it's just going to be a big old ramble. I'm still going to put timestamps below so you can like skip to the different chapters, whatever you're interested in. And hopefully you find something that's interesting to you. Maybe you can relate to some of these lessons and maybe you can learn something from it even. Whatever, comment whatever you are thinking about, whatever comes to your mind, and we will see how it goes. It's going to be a long video, I think. So sit down, make a tea, and just listen to me if you want, or do some housework on the side, or do whatever you need to do. All right. So the first thing I want to speak about is that I think one mistake I've made is to journal less. And I want to talk about why I journaled less. I'm okay that I did that because I've said before that 2021 to me has been a year of really putting into action things that I've learned before. So it was more of an action year of like, okay, I'm putting these lessons into physical reality rather than just talking about them or learning about something. But nevertheless, I think I could have journaled more, taken some more time to journal and be present with myself. Because to me, journaling has always set things in motion. And especially in 2021, I got stuck in this mindset where I was like, I journal and then I don't change things and it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really help me. But it's not true, because whenever I journal, that alone gives my brain some cool feedback and some lessons to work with that I then can put into action pretty easily and effortlessly without having to think about it much. Because it is just a fact that with our subconscious and with our brains, once you put your mind to something, put your intention to something, like say I want to change a belief or change a behavior, you are able to do it more easily in your sleep, for example, or when you are resting. This especially comes into play with creative work, which is kind of different from what I'm talking about. But in creative work especially, if you spend one evening researching the topics that you want to write about in your novel or whatever the next day, you can just research it and then completely trash all the research, go to bed, wake up the next morning, and your brain will have made connections and creative relationships within your mind, like automatically, so to speak, as you were sleeping. This is a well-researched thing. So I think that is kind of what happens with my journaling, where I sit down and I think about something, I think about what I want to change, I think about how I felt, what is going on, and then my brain just kind of does its thing on its own and incorporates these lessons way more easily than if I just think about it or don't write it down. You know what I mean? Let me know if you feel similarly and if that is what you feel is the purpose of journaling for you. Because personally, I don't look back on my notes very often at all. I'll do it like twice a year on a full moon. I'm like, oh, what did I think last full moon? Like, or last year at this time or something like that. And also for this video, I'm very happy that I journaled because it helped me get together all of these points basically. But other than that, I don't look back on my notes very often. The second thing that I want to talk about is something I've mentioned in my 2020 video already. It is questioning self-pity or questioning emotions in general. Now, I'm not saying that emotions aren't valid, but I think I'm very happy that within the spiritual community or the self-help community or whatever you want to call it, it has become much more common to not coddle yourself in a way, and like tell yourself, oh, you're right, you're great, everyone else is wrong, everyone else is disrespecting your boundaries, everyone else is not as spiritually advanced or hasn't done as much shadow work. I feel like that was the trend all the way up to 2019. And then in 2020, I feel like the trend sort of shifted towards taking more accountability, questioning your own impulsive or emotional reactions, and just being a little bit more able to control and question your emotions. That still means you can feel them, of course, and you can still validate them, but it also means to not put emotions on a pedestal and say like, damn, they are so much more important than rational thought, or don't let logic come into my emotions. My emotions are my emotions. Leave me alone with logic. You know, that's an approach that isn't always helpful. And I feel like more people are realizing that. And personally, I've definitely been able to work on this in 2021 to see that my emotions aren't reality and I don't have to react out of my emotions immediately all the time. This also concerns stuff like, you know, if I wake up and I feel sort of depressed or numb, which is kind of uncommon for me, but sometimes it does happen if fall comes in and there's no sun and stuff like that. You know, I wake up and I'm like, I feel pretty numb and unmotivated. This is kind of a little bit of a depressive episode maybe. And I can just accept that, you know, and I have my tools to deal with it. I have my ways of dealing with it. Sometimes I don't do those things and it's still okay, which I'm very blessed that I feel like I don't have really, really heavy depression or anything like that, seriously. But I do have days where I notice that my mental health is just not great. And I can deal with that now, you know? It's kind of like, oh, well, it's just like a day of it or two in the best cases or a week. But still, I can see that it's a phase and I can deal with it, and that emotions aren't always reality and thoughts aren't always reality as well. How do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like it's true what I'm saying, that the trend has sort of switched to taking more accountability and doing less coddling, and like not being responsible for anything except for yourself and your own emotions, like more accepting that we live in a community, right? And that we're all connected? Let me know. Maybe it's just the accounts I started following. That's why I feel like in my bubble, this consciousness is kind of coming to light. Or maybe it is a general thing. I don't know. So the third thing is something that I think kind of relates to codependency. Some people also say it's a bit of an Aries complex because I am an Aries. Other people say it's related to being socialized as women. I think there's many reasons for this behavior that I'm about to speak about, but I don't know. What do you feel your reasons are? I don't know what exactly my reasons are. Well, I kind of do because I know where my codependency stems from, but still, I feel like there are multiple reasons for this. So the third thing I want to speak about is working on feeling valuable if I don't do something for other people. What this relates to is this idea that you are only worthy and valuable to other people, and other people only like you or love you if you do something for them. Because I've stepped out of this mindset towards the beginning of 2021 already, it's kind of hard for me to reconstruct now what I did or how I felt because it seems so far removed now. But I definitely know that I used to have this need, especially years ago, of wanting to be needed by other people, but not needing anyone myself. So this sort of denial of interpersonal dependency, or denial of the fact that we are all kind of a community and we are all connected and help each other. It's not just one person helping everyone else and nobody helping me because I don't ask for help. But still, that is sort of what I had in my mind, this idea like, oh, don't be a burden, but do help other people, you know? I've really stepped out of that, and I've really stopped meddling in other people's lives too much in that regard as well. I feel like this also applies to my job. As you maybe know or don't know, I have like a normal muggle job, an office job, so to say, as a copywriter. And there, I used to take a lot of responsibility for things that weren't really in my area, and I used to meddle in a lot of things to make processes go more smoothly. And I've realized that I need to stop doing that because I have to just have healthier boundaries. It just makes life easier. And even though things may take longer if I don't involve myself, or maybe they don't even take longer if I don't involve myself, it's just good for me to recognize that and to be like, okay, I can let that go. It's fine. It will go without me giving my input. And I want to speak about this specifically with self-help related topics as well. This is kind of point 3.1, 3A, where I think a lot of people think if they know so much about psychology, about self-help, about self-development, self-improvement, spirituality, whatever, that they are able to tell other people what is best in their lives. Like, you kind of think, well, I can see that this person is addicted to their phone, let's say, and I have to tell them, like, I have to tell them they have to improve this, or they are not doing enough in their job, they are not doing enough for their self-growth. I have to push them to do it. I feel like this especially happens with romantic partners, for other people, and used to happen for me as well. And I think it's just kind of an unhealthy mindset that borders on codependency, where obviously you want the best for the other person, and that's great, but you are also assuming that you know what is best for them, and they don't. And that is then an arrogance that I feel goes back into this whole like, oh, spirituality, like I'm more spiritually or psychologically or whatever advanced than other people, and I can show them the way and all of that. Nah, it gets problematic, you know? Okay, then I have point number 4. I feel like I spoke about this in 2020 as well, but I kind of have added new points to it. So let's jump into that. Point number 4 is don't expect things to happen if you don't initiate them. That means if you want a friendship to be built, or if you want any sort of connection or relationship to be built, or if you want a new job or a new apartment, like, don't expect things to just come to you. Now, with job and apartment search, we totally understand this. We understand that we have to get active. But with friendships and relationships, I feel like a lot of people, including myself in the past, have this thinking of like, well, if they want to see me, they'll write to me, or if they want to meet, or if they're interested in me, they will. Obviously, you have to be a little bit sensitive to what other people want. If someone literally never writes to you, they probably don't want to see you. But still, like, you have to kind of let go this need to always have people tell you like, oh, you're cool, I want to see you, etc. But at the same time, if that's not something you can tolerate for whatever reason, you can find friends that are like that. You can find friends that bring together groups, that bring together many people at once and just always invite you, etc. That's great if you have that, but I think don't get too stuck on that. Don't get too stuck on thinking that other people always have to invite you. Do you ever invite them? Do you ever ask them to go out? You know what I mean? So yeah, initiate things if you feel like it, and don't just expect others to initiate. Number 5, this is a lesson that I think I've learned throughout the past years, so it's not necessarily a 2021 lesson, but it's definitely intensified by the fact that there are a lot of problematic opinions in the world at the moment, and a lot of disagreements about things, let's say. So in general, I've learned to be so sure of myself that I don't have to push my opinion on others, especially with regards to family members, because I feel like with my friends, I mostly have the same opinion as them. And with social media, I never had the need to convince anyone of anything. So it's mostly like people who are close to me and who have differing opinions about things that are sort of problematic or selfish or whatever. So it used to be that I really felt like I needed people to be convinced and to have the same opinion as me. And like the smallest thing, like 10 years ago, the smallest thing would set me off, and I would like argue like for feminism or whatever it was concerning, or like anti-sexist. But nowadays, what would trigger me especially is probably racism. If I see that, I really still probably cannot shut my mouth when it comes to that. And I don't mind that, actually. It's okay. But I think you also have to see, where do you use your energy? So I was listening to a podcast by TJ, the Half-Ass Witch. I can put a link to it below, that they are doing with their partner. And they were talking about how they really have to question for themselves, is it worth it to try to convince 5 people who are Trump supporters of their opinion that racism is bad? Or is it more worth it that they keep doing the work that they are doing on Instagram, because they post a lot about anti-racism and like deconstructing racist thinking? And isn't that more valuable to talk to, I don't know, 10, 20, 100 people, whoever many people see or like the post, who are actually open to changing and open to anti-racist thinking, than trying to convince 5 people who are never going to be convinced by you, and just, fight with them essentially. So that's kind of how I feel about it as well. I've stopped, like where I see literally no hope, I do stop the conversation pretty quickly, though I do try usually. But I don't have this need anymore to make myself feel understood or push my opinion on others, because I really want them to understand it. Not because I think I'm right or better than them, or like, the self-righteous doing the right thing, but because I really want people to understand, because it's a topic that is so close to my heart and so important to me. But then, not everyone deserves to see that. Not everyone deserves to hear me rant about anti-racism. I'm not as pushy as I used to be. I'm kind of like, take it or leave it, Now, the 6th thing that I've learned in 2021, as many of us probably, is to really drop the girl boss stereotype or girl boss ideal. And I'm more and more slipping into anti-capitalist thinking. And I think the girl boss archetype is really a deeply capitalist ideal that disguises itself as being empowering for women. I'm not going to deny that it's empowering for women to get their own money, run their own business, etc. But at the core of that, we should still question it a little bit, because defining yourself through grind culture is not good. Because grind culture, like idealizing the grind, working as much as you can, getting as much money as you can, at the core, it's capitalism. And not in a good way, because then people burn out, people start doubting themselves, like how much they are worth. If they don't succeed with their business, they think they just have to put in a little bit more effort and destroy themselves doing it. And I don't think it's a good archetype to follow, personally. If it's great for you, if it works for you, that's awesome. It doesn't work for me. It's never worked for me. And 2021 has kind of given me the validity to that, because I've always had an issue with it. I'm always like, it doesn't quite resonate with me, And then I started seeing more posts about it and more people doubting it and saying like, yeah, it's kind of rooted in capitalism. And it's not really empowering to most people. It just glorifies grind culture. And then I was like, huh, yeah, that sums up why I've always had an issue with it, but I couldn't put it into words. So that's that. Okay, now number 7 goes kind of deep. So bear with me. This is a little bit of a shadow work thing that I have to do, and it probably also relates to codependency in some ways. So this is also a belief, one of the beliefs that I will read to you that I had to change. So I used to think, or I became aware of the fact that my thinking is, because I wasn't aware of me thinking this. I would have never put it into words like that, because I think this is the great thing about journaling and journaling about your beliefs and getting really honest with it, because then you read it and you're like, damn, I believe that. And it's like, yeah, you do, obviously, by your behavior, you seem to believe this, even if you would have never put it into words like that. Okay, so what I've realized is that a lot of the time I'm trying to predict other people's reactions and matching my behavior to that reaction or to the reaction I want in order to feel safe. It's a little bit manipulative, but not super manipulative, I would say. It's not a conscious thing. It's just something I do for safety. And I think that I'm responsible or I am in control of other people's feelings and reactions. Classic codependent thinking. Now, this is definitely a relic of codependency, but it is very subtle, so I didn't notice it for a long time. This also relates to over-explaining in order to feel safe. You know, this idea of like, if I just explain it well enough, the person will understand and react accordingly, rather than just, I don't know, setting a boundary or talking about my feelings or communicating a need. I have to over-explain it, because not meeting other people's expectations used to make me feel guilty. So I thought, okay, if I over-explain it, they will understand and they will not resent me and they will not feel like I'm not meeting their expectation, and they will understand this is my need and it's important, you know? And then you start over-explaining yourself. Usually people really see it as over-explaining and don't understand why you're doing it. So that's an interesting thing to reflect on. And I want to read real quick the beliefs that I wrote down for this, the beliefs that I changed. Wow, I opened the page like immediately. That was great. So this is the old belief. The old belief is like 2 or 3 sentences. Bear with me. The old belief is, if I only understand and see through someone enough, I can not only anticipate their responses to me, but I can change my behavior in order to get the desired response. Thus, I am responsible for other people's reactions to and feelings about me. The new belief, I try not to, you know, when I do this like old new belief thing, I don't just negate the old belief. I don't just write like, oh, I don't believe that people only understand me, blah, 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 blah. But I really formulate it in a new way, which you will see when I read it to you now. So the new belief is, if I understand myself and my own needs deeply, I can communicate them clearly. The other person's reaction is not my responsibility. And if I cannot fathom or understand their reaction, this does not compromise my safety. My safety is grounded in me having my needs and stating them, knowing my needs and stating them, sorry. Yeah, so I have a second belief that I also want to read to you. First I will read the old belief once again. Old belief is, my needs will only be met if I manipulate others with my knowledge of their soul and their behavior. Stating it openly doesn't get my needs met. No, that's like a terrible thing to believe. And as I was writing it, I'm like, damn, that's sad. But it's true, you know, because at the end of the day, I'm kind of reluctant to call it manipulation, because I'm not like maliciously manipulating people. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, well, if you don't do this for me, then I won't do this for you. If you don't do that, like, it's not this obvious manipulation or something you see during the holidays where it's like, well, if you don't visit me on Christmas, you're a bad child or something like that. Not that obvious and not that intense. It's just like small behavioral changes. Anyways, the new belief that goes with this old belief is manipulation leads to my surface level needs being met, but not the deeper needs I have that I'm afraid to show in a non-manipulative way. Because often when I speak about my needs to someone, I do it in like a very backwards way. I over-explain myself. I don't just state it clearly. I kind of want to guide them into meeting that need. And that's obviously a good way to get what you want, but it's not really healthy, I would say. I don't think I do this in a super toxic way, in the sense that I never convince someone to do something they don't want to do. But I think it's more on my side that I'm afraid that if I just state my need, which would probably also get it met, that it would somehow be too blunt for the other person. So I tone it down, I over-explain, all these things, you know, like things to make me feel safe. I've been really working on that, and I feel like I don't do that as intensely anymore as of December 2021. So that's a huge lesson that I had during the year. Now, the eighth thing I want to talk about is something interesting that I read about Capricorn North nodes and Cancer South nodes. If you know anything about astrology, you will know that the North node is kind of what you're going towards in life, and the South node is what you already know. Now, obviously, there are a lot of Capricorn North nodes and Cancer South nodes who are born around the same time as me, because these transits tend to last a long time. Now, I want to read it to you, what I heard about them, and hear your thoughts. I don't know what you are. If you are Cancer South and Capricorn North node, I would love to hear what you think about this. Because the statement is, and I read this in an article by Alice Sparkly Cat. They are one of my favorite astrologers as well. I love their content. What it said was, Cap North nodes, Cancer South nodes, if they feel safe, they are rebellious, tenacious, and intense. If they don't feel safe, they over-explain and need saving rather than saving themselves. I feel like that's very true. It's probably very true for a lot of people. It's not just Capricorn North nodes. But I'd love to hear how you feel about that statement. I'm not sure how I feel about it, like whether I think it applies to me, but it kind of stuck with me and I think it's interesting. So tell me what you think in the comments. I'll read it again. If the person feels safe, they are rebellious, tenacious, and intense. If they don't feel safe, they over-explain and need saving rather than saving themselves. So it's kind of like, if you don't feel safe, you become a baby. But if you're confident and safe, you are rebellious, tenacious, and intense. You are not rebellious, tenacious, and intense when you feel unsafe, but only when you feel safe, which is a very interesting behavior. Okay, so now at the end of this, I briefly want to talk about my plans or wishes, for 2022. And I think on the very, 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 very top of the list is I really need to beat my phone addiction, because seriously, over the last month or two, I've been on my phone countless hours and it's just too much. And I noticed that it's really affecting how I perceive the world and how I interact with the world, and like always going to your phone first, you know. And I don't know what my status with that was in 2020. I know I had a super good phase where I was absolutely not addicted to my phone for quite a long time. And that was one of the lessons I had learned, but now I feel like I've kind of reverted back into that, and it's not cool, and it's really blocking myself from being present with my life and with my feelings and my needs and my wishes and my goals, and I don't like that. So beating the phone addiction is one thing, and basically replacing, let's put it like this, replacing phone addiction with moments of being more present and perceiving what is around me rather than grabbing my phone immediately. And then number 2 is I really want to, I think this is partly or largely inspired by Kelly and Maddox, because she always has these, not always, I think she has at least one like cute vlog of like a date with herself, like a date night or date day with herself. And I like that. I like the idea of dating yourself and specifically setting apart time, even when you're in a relationship, of setting apart time that you just spend with yourself doing something that you like, and not always having to include your partner, or not always having to include friends, or not always having to include, I don't know, dates, whatever, other people, but to really date yourself. I really like that idea, and I want to do that more consciously. And the third thing is, this is something that one of my other favorite astrologers, Sarah Verba, said in one of her videos, is to learn that if you pick up less, more happens. Whether it's work or relationships, doing less and kind of letting go and not having to have 10 topics at the same time, and not diving into 10 different study areas at the same time, and not having 10 to-dos for one day, can really improve what happens. This also kind of relates back to the phone addiction, because I feel like the phone addiction is related to always needing something to happen. I always need something to happen, need to be stimulated. And if less happens, and if you go a bit slower, then more can happen or deeper things can happen. Let's put it like that. If you pick up less, deeper things can happen. Other things can happen than if you are busy, busy, busy all the time and numbing your brain with your phone, like I tend to do quite intensely. One more thing I also want to say is that I think it's very problematic how comfortable I feel. No, let me rephrase this. I think a lot of people would be uncomfortable to admit that they are alcoholics or that they have an issue with drugs or whatever, but people are very comfortable with admitting that they are addicted to their phones, and I find that very strange. Just because it's not literally destroying your body, it's still doing something to you, mostly your mind actually, to be addicted to your phone. Being addicted to your phone is super accepted. It's a kind of okay, you know? It's like, haha, I'm addicted to my phone, but it's really not good. I'm not saying you should be ashamed of yourself if you're addicted to your phone, but I think it's interesting that people are ashamed of something like drug addiction and alcohol addiction, whatever other addictions. But phone addiction is kind of this thing where it's like, oh, it's a cute thing, you know, like, oh, I'm addicted to my phone. It's not something shameful, which, yeah, is interesting. I think it shows how unaware we are of the dangers of it. And I know I'm starting to sound like a boomer or something, but I think it's not really a matter of like, oh, our society is going to collapse and you are a bad person if you are addicted to your phone. It's more like the most damage you do is to yourself. And that is really the issue here. And that is something we have to work on, and that I have to work on, to acknowledge that being addicted to your phone really does damage to your mind and possibly your body as well, depending on the posture that you have when you stare at your phone all day. So yeah, that's kind of a depressing note to end this video on. Let me know what you've learned in 2020 in the comments. Let me know what 2020, god damn it. Tell me what you learned in 2021 in the comments. And also let me know what your plans are for 2022, if you have any, what you want to reach, what you want to achieve. I am very consciously not setting many goals, like achievements and shit like that, because honestly, I just want to live and enjoy my life. And I don't think that I have to set up all these goalposts for myself to enjoy my life, because I'm enjoying it plenty as it is. And it's just kind of about living it and changing myself and going with the change that the world is going through and kind of working with that, rather than becoming rigid about whatever it would be, making money or getting subscribers or starting a business or changing something in my job or getting a certificate or stuff like that. I'm not saying goals like that are bad, but for me right now, I don't want to like set all of those for the next year. Okay, Anyways, that is really it. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking this video and subscribing if you are not yet subscribed to my channel. I would love to have you. And yes, thank you so much. And I will see you very, very soon.